In the twilight hours of a dying age, when the last stars of the old world began to dim, there lived a kingdom that time itself had chosen to forget. The realm of Eldermoor stretched across misty valleys where ancient oaks whispered secrets to the wind, and where silver streams carried the memories of ages long past. It was here, in this land touched by both shadow and starlight, that the final chapter of a great dynasty would unfold in silence and sorrow. King Vaelthorne the Last sat upon the throne of whispers, a seat carved from moonstone that had witnessed 3,000 years of royal succession. His weathered hands rested gently on the arms of the throne, fingers tracing patterns worn smooth by countless rulers before him. The crown upon his brow, forged from starfall metal and adorned with gems that captured the essence of Twilight itself, felt heavier with each passing day, not from its physical weight, but from the burden of being the final bearer of an ancient legacy. The great hall around him stood empty now, save for the dancing shadows cast by dying torches. Tapestries that once depicted glorious battles and golden harvests hung in faded splendor, their colors muted by time and tears. The throne room had once echoed with the laughter of children, the counsel of wise advisors, and the songs of court minstrels. Now it knew only the gentle whisper of wind through broken windows and the soft footfalls of the king as he walked his solitary vigils. Each tapestry told a story of the kingdom's golden ages, woven with threads that caught and held the light of memory. The great tapestry of the first dawn showed the founding of Eldermoor, when the star-blessed prince, Alderon, had first set foot upon these misty shores, following a vision granted by the ancient celestial spirits. His ship, the Starward Dream, had been guided by lights that danced between the heavens and the sea, leading him to a land where magic flowed like water and time moved with a rhythm of eternal seasons. The tapestry of the Dragon Peace depicted the historic accord between the kingdom and the great worms of the eastern mountains, when Queen Lyanna the Dragonheart had walked alone into the lair of Stellarion the Ancient, carrying nothing but songs of friendship and offerings of starlight blessed honey. The great dragon, moved by her courage and the purity of her intentions, had pledged the eternal protection of his kind to Eldermoor, and for 2 millennia, the sight of dragon wings against the sunset sky had been a symbol of peace and prosperity. Another tapestry showed the night of falling stars, when the kingdom had been blessed with a shower of celestial fragments that became the foundation stones of every major city and castle. The people had gathered in the fields and gardens, holding up vessels of pure crystal to catch the falling starlight, which hardened into gems of incredible beauty and power. These stars fallen to earth had been woven into the very architecture of Eldermoor, ensuring that every building, every street, every garden path glowed with a gentle inner radiance that never faded. The tapestry of the Great Healing showed the time when plague had threatened the neighboring kingdoms, and how Princess Miriel the Merciful had opened Eldermoor's borders to all who suffered, regardless of their origins or allegiances. The sacred springs had run red with healing waters, and the kingdom's physicians had worked without rest until every soul was restored to health. The gratitude of the saved had created bonds of friendship that lasted for centuries, making Eldermoor a beacon of hope in a world often darkened by conflict and fear. Yet another tapestry depicted the festival of eternal harmony, held once every 100 years, when all the magical creatures of the realm would gather in the great amphitheater of stars. Unicorns would dance with phoenix, while silver stags would sing alongside crystal butterflies. The music created during these festivals was said to heal the very fabric of reality, mending tears between the worlds and ensuring that magic would continue to flow through the land. The tapestry of the winter rose told of the year when winter had lasted 7 seasons, threatening to freeze the kingdom into eternal ice. Queen Rosamond the Devoted had walked barefoot through the snow to the heart of winter, a mystical place where the essence of cold itself resided. There, she had bargained with the Ice King, offering her own warmth and passion to end the endless winter. The roses that bloomed in the wake of her sacrifice were said to carry within their petals the memory of her love, as they continued to bloom even in the deepest snow. Vaelthorne was not alone by circumstance, but by choice. His kingdom still breathed around him, though quietly, like a sleeper in the final moments before dawn. The people of Eldermoor had not abandoned their monarch, nor had plague or war claimed them. Instead, deeper magic was at work, an ancient spell woven into the very foundations of the realm. As the bloodline of the first kings drew to its close, so too would the kingdom gently fade, returning to the mists and starlight from whence it came. This understanding had been passed down through the royal lineage for 3,000 years, each ruler accepting their role in the great cosmic cycle with grace and dignity. The kingdom itself had been created with the knowledge that it would one day choose to transcend its physical existence, becoming something greater and more beautiful than stone and steel could ever be. The people of Eldermoor had been prepared for this transformation through generations of gentle teaching and spiritual guidance. Their philosophers spoke not of endings, but of becoming. Their priests preached not of death, but of evolution. Their artists created works that captured not just beauty, but the essence of transcendence itself. The king understood this destiny as clearly as he understood the turning of seasons or the phases of the moon. It had been foretold in the crystal prophecy, spoken by the oracle of the deepmost well on the day of his birth. The oracle, a being of impossible age and wisdom, whose eyes held the depth of eternity itself, had emerged from the sacred waters that connected all realms to speak words that would guide the kingdom's final chapter. The prophecy had been witnessed by representatives from every corner of the known world, ensuring that the words would be preserved exactly as spoken. The oracle's voice had carried the weight of cosmic authority, each syllable resonating with the fundamental frequencies of creation itself. The words had been carved into the pillars of fate that stood in the temple's heart, but their true meaning had been written on the souls of all who heard them. When the child of starlight and shadow takes the throne, he shall be both first and last, the oracle had intoned, her voice carrying harmonics that made the very stones weep tears of joy. First in wisdom, last in time. Through his willing sacrifice, the kingdom shall transcend the bonds of earth and find its place among the eternal stars. The crown he bears shall become a constellation, and the love he gives shall become a light that guides lost souls home. The oracle had spoken of other visions as well, of the gardens that would bloom eternal in the realm beyond time, of the rivers that would carry the songs of joy to distant worlds, of the libraries that would preserve not just knowledge, but understanding itself. She had seen the people of Eldermoor taking their place among the cosmic guardians, beings whose purpose was to tend and nurture the seeds of hope wherever they might grow. For 40 years, Vaelthorne had ruled with the knowledge of his destiny, and far from filling him with dread, it had given him a profound sense of purpose. Every decision he made, every law he passed, every act of mercy or justice he performed was done with the understanding that he was preparing his people for their ultimate transformation. He had ruled not just as their king, but as their guide on a journey that would culminate in the most beautiful ending ever witnessed. The preparation had been subtle but thorough, woven into the very fabric of daily life in Eldermoor. Children learned songs that would prepare their souls for transcendence, while adults practiced meditation techniques that would ease their transition. The elderly shared stories that contained hidden wisdom about the nature of existence beyond the physical realm. The kingdom's greatest scholars had spent decades studying the mechanics of willing transformation, learning from the examples of hermit masters who had achieved individual transcendence in ages past. They discovered that the process required not just individual readiness, but collective harmony, a unity of purpose and love that could only be achieved by a people who truly understood the meaning of selfless devotion. The king rose slowly from his throne, his blue and silver robes rustling like autumn leaves. The fabric was woven from moonbeam silk, a material that could only be harvested on certain nights when the moon was perfectly aligned with the constellation of the Eternal Crown. The silk worms that produced this thread were no ordinary creatures, but beings touched by celestial magic, their cocoons spun from dreams and starlight. Oh, the process of creating moonbeam silk was an art passed down through generations of master weavers, each of whom had dedicated their lives to understanding the relationship between celestial phenomena and earthly craft. The thread shimmered and shifted with his movements, creating patterns of light that seemed to tell their own stories of ancient magic and royal grace. The embroidery on the robes had been worked by the finest needle artists in the kingdom, each stitch placed with meditative precision and blessed with prayers for wisdom and compassion. The patterns depicted the entire history of Eldermoor in miniature, from the first sunrise over the virgin forests to this final twilight of transformation. As the king moved, the embroidered scenes seemed to come alive, showing brief glimpses of the great moments that had shaped his realm. He was neither old nor young, but existed in that timeless space between seasons, where winter's wisdom met spring's gentle promise. His hair, the color of moonlight on water, fell to his shoulders in waves that caught and held the flickering torchlight. Each strand seemed to carry within it the memory of every dawn and sunset he had witnessed from the throne, creating a living chronicle of his reign. His eyes, deep as forest pools, held the accumulated sadness and joy of all who had come before him. In their depths, one could see reflections of every citizen he had known, every decision he had made, every moment of triumph and sorrow that had marked his 40 years as king. They were eyes that had seen the birth of hope and the peaceful acceptance of endings, eyes that held no fear of what was to come. Upon his feet were the sandals of the wandering king, made from leather that had been blessed by every realm Eldermoor had ever allied with. The leather came from the sacred herds of the western plains, animals that lived in perfect harmony with the seasonal spirits and whose lives were expressions of pure love and service. The sandals had been crafted by Master Eldon, the Cordwainer, whose workshop stood at the crossroads of 7 magical paths. He had spent a full year creating them, working only during the hours when the constellation of the crown was visible in the sky. Each stitch had been placed according to sacred geometry, ensuring that the sandals would carry their wearer safely on any journey, whether through the physical world or the realms of spirit. They had been worn by his father and his father's father and every king back to the founding of the dynasty. The leather bore the imprint of every step taken in service to the kingdom, every journey made to secure peace or aid those in need. The sandals had walked the length and breadth of Eldermoor countless times, had climbed the highest mountains and descended into the deepest valleys, had carried their wearers to diplomatic meetings that prevented wars and rescue missions that saved lives. Tonight, they would carry him on his final journey as an earthly monarch, and then beyond, into the realm where earthly titles became meaningless and only the soul's true nature mattered. The leather had grown supple with age and blessing, molding itself perfectly to his feet, while providing a connection to all the sacred places these sandals had touched. Around his neck hung the pendant of eternal memory, a crystal that contained within its faceted depths the image of every person who had ever served the crown with loyalty and love. The crystal had been formed in the deepest chambers of the earth, where time moved differently and thoughts took on physical form. It had been discovered by the first king's dwarf companions, who recognized its power and carefully shaped it into a pendant worthy of royal wearing. As he moved, the crystal caught the torchlight and cast tiny rainbows on the walls, each one carrying the essence of a cherished memory. The rainbows danced and swirled, creating patterns that told wordless stories of friendship, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. Sometimes, if one looked carefully, faces could be seen in the colored light, the features of long-dead servants and advisors who continued to offer their guidance from beyond the veil. The pendant grew warm against his chest, as if responding to the approaching transformation. He could feel the love of generations flowing through it like a gentle current, strengthening his resolve and filling him with the courage needed for what lay ahead. The crystal seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, synchronized with his own. creating a rhythm that connected him to every soul who had ever called Eldermoor home. Walking to the great windows that faced the west, Vaelthorne gazed out upon his fading realm. The view from the throne room encompassed the entire heart of Eldermoor, from the crystal gardens that surrounded the palace to the distant peaks of the starward mountains. The windows themselves were marvels of both craftsmanship and magic, their glass made from sand that had been touched by falling stars and shaped by master glaziers who understood that transparency was a form of truth. The view stretched across miles of gently rolling hills covered with forests that glowed with their own inner light. The trees of Eldermoor were not ordinary specimens, but beings that had been awakened to consciousness by the songs of the first druids. Each grove had its own personality and wisdom, and the forests served as living libraries where those seeking knowledge could find answers among the whispering leaves. The gardens below still bloomed with flowers that glowed softly in the evening light, their petals shimmering with an inner radiance that spoke of magic older than memory. These were the flowers of eternal spring, planted by the first queen with seeds brought from the realm of the fairies. They bloomed year-round, their colors shifting with the emotions of those who tended them, creating a living tapestry that reflected the heart of the kingdom. Each flower bed had been designed according to principles of sacred geometry, creating patterns that channeled and focused magical energy throughout the palace grounds. The paths between the beds were paved with stones that sang soft melodies when walked upon, their notes combining to create harmonies that promoted peace and contemplation. The moonwell at the center of the gardens reflected not just the sky above, but glimpses of other realms and times. The well had been dug by the first king himself, following a dream in which he saw water that connected all worlds. The spring that fed it came from sources so deep that they touched the very heart of the earth, bringing up water that carried within it the memories of creation itself. Tonight its surface showed visions of Eldermoor's past, celebrations and festivals, royal weddings and naming ceremonies, moments of triumph and reconciliation that had shaped the kingdom's character. The water rippled gently, as if stirred by invisible hands, and each ripple carried away another memory to be preserved in the cosmic archives of time. The palace guards continued their gentle rounds, their footsteps as soft as falling snow, their armor gleaming with a light that seemed to come from within rather than without. These were the Knights of the Silver Dawn, warriors who had taken vows not just of protection and service, but of peace and understanding. Their training involved not only martial skills, but meditation, philosophy, and the arts of healing. Their armor was forged from the same starfall metal as the king's crown, but the smithing process was as much ritual as craftsmanship. Each piece was shaped while the smith chanted ancient prayers, and the metal was quenched in water from the sacred springs, while blessed oils burned in braziers around the forge. The resulting armor was lighter than steel, but stronger than diamond, and it glowed with a gentle radiance that could calm even the fiercest predator. Their weapons sang with harmonies that could calm the wildest beasts and soothe the most troubled hearts, The swords were not tools of war, but instruments of peace, designed to channel the wielder's intent to protect and serve. In all the centuries of Eldermoor's existence, these weapons had never tasted blood in anger, for their very presence was enough to turn enemies into friends. Captain Seraphiel, the longest serving of the knights, paused beneath the king's window and offered a salute that spoke of decades of faithful service and deep affection. His movement was fluid grace itself, every gesture refined by years of practice and meditation. He had been Vaelthorne's friend since childhood, when they had studied together under the tutelage of Master Aldwin the Wise. Seraphiel's armor bore the marks of countless peaceful resolutions. For each time his presence had prevented conflict, a small star appeared on the metal, creating a constellation that told the story of his service. His helm was crowned with plumes that had been gifts from the phoenix who nested in the eternal mountains, feathers that glowed with inner fire and carried the blessing of renewal. Now his graying beard and lined face told the story of a life spent in service to ideals greater than himself. His eyes, though touched by the weight of years, still held the bright curiosity and unwavering loyalty that had made him the perfect companion for a king who valued wisdom above strength. In his eyes, Vaelthorne could see understanding and acceptance and a love that transcended the relationship between king and subject. In the distance, the capital city of Lumendor spread like a jewel across the valley floor. Its spires and towers reached toward the darkening sky, their crystal windows flickering with the warm, golden light. The architecture of Lumendor was unlike anything found in other realms, for it had been designed not just for beauty and function, but to harmonize with the magical energies that flowed through the land. Every building was positioned according to ancient principles of celestial alignment, creating a city that resonated with the music of the spheres. The streets followed ley lines of power that ran beneath the earth, and the squares and plazas were located at points where these energies intersected. The result was a city that felt alive, where the very stones seemed to pulse with gentle life, and the air itself carried a sense of peace and possibility. The great library of Lumendor rose like a crystal mountain at the city's heart, its transparent walls revealing the countless volumes housed within. The library had been designed by architects who understood that knowledge was a living thing that needed room to grow and breathe. The walls were made from crystal that had been sung into shape by choir masters who understood the relationship between sound and form. Books from every corner of the known world filled its shelves, along with texts written in languages that predated the current age. The collection included not just written knowledge, but crystallized memories, bottled dreams, and scrolls that wrote themselves as history unfolded. The library was more than a repository of knowledge. It was a living entity that could sense the needs of those who entered and guide them to the wisdom they sought. The reading rooms were illuminated by captured starlight that never faded, creating an environment perfect for study and contemplation. Scholars from distant lands would journey for months to spend time in these chambers, where a single day's reading could provide insights that would guide a lifetime's work. The citizens went about their evening routines with the calm acceptance of those who understand that all things must end, and that endings, when approached with grace, can be as beautiful as beginnings. The people of Eldermoor had been blessed with long lives and deep wisdom, and they understood that their collective destiny was not a tragedy to be mourned, but a gift to be celebrated. In the market squares, merchants closed their stalls with gentle songs of gratitude for the day's blessings. Each transaction that had taken place was seen as an exchange of more than goods, but of kindness and community. The merchants had learned to see their trade as a form of service, bringing not just necessary items to their customers, but joy and connection. The market stalls themselves were works of art, constructed from living wood that continued to grow and bloom even after being shaped. The awnings were woven from spider silk that had been freely given by the great arachnids of the Whispering Woods, creating coverings that were both beautiful and practically indestructible. In the residential quarters, families gathered for evening meals that were celebrations of love and togetherness. The houses of Lumendor were built to foster harmony, with flowing designs that encouraged the easy movement of both people and positive energy. Gardens flourished between and around the homes, creating micro ecosystems where families could grow their own food and flowers. Children played in the streets, their laughter ringing like silver bells, while their parents watched with eyes full of pride and protective tenderness. The games the children played were not mere entertainment, but subtle lessons in cooperation, creativity, and cosmic understanding. Their toys were crafted by artisans who understood that play was a sacred activity that shaped the soul. The elderly sat on benches carved from living wood, sharing stories of the old days with anyone willing to listen, their voices carrying the weight and beauty of accumulated wisdom. These storytellers were the living memory of the kingdom, and their tales were not just entertainment, but education, passing down the values and understanding that had made Eldermoor the paradise it had become. The evening gardens came alive as the sun set, for many of Eldermoor's flowers bloomed only in darkness. The night-blooming starflowers opened their petals to release fragrances that carried memories and dreams on the evening air. These were not ordinary scents, but aromas that could trigger visions of distant places and times, allowing those who breathed them to experience the wisdom of ages. The flowers themselves were tended by the night gardeners, a guild of botanist mystics who understood that plants were not mere decorations, but partners in the great work of creation. They spoke to their charges in languages older than words, singing lullabies that encouraged growth and whispering secrets that helped the flowers understand their cosmic purpose. Couples walked hand in hand along the moonstone paths, speaking in whispers of love and hope. The paths themselves were paved with stones that had been blessed by every full moon for 1,000 years, creating walkways that strengthened the bonds between all who walked upon them. The moonstones glowed with gentle light that needed no external source, creating an atmosphere of romance and magic. The twilight bell had rung at sunset, as it had for countless centuries, its deep, melodious tone carrying across the kingdom like a gentle blessing. The bell itself was a marvel of both craftsmanship and magic, forged from metals that had fallen from the stars and tuned to resonate with the fundamental frequencies of creation. The bell tower that housed it was a spire of impossible grace, its architecture defying conventional understanding while remaining perfectly stable and beautiful. The tower was built around a core of crystallized music, songs that had been solidified into structural elements through processes known only to the master builders of the First Age. Its voice could be heard in every corner of the realm, not just as sound, but as a feeling in the heart, a reminder that all souls were connected in the great symphony of existence. The bell's tone varied with the spiritual health of the kingdom, becoming more beautiful as the people grew in wisdom and compassion. Tonight, however, the bell sang with a note of finality, its voice deeper and more resonant than ever before. The sound carried within it the accumulated emotions of 3,000 years, joy and sorrow, triumph and loss, love and farewell. The harmonics were so complex that musicians who heard them wept at the beauty they could perceive, but never hoped to reproduce. Those who heard it paused in their evening tasks, not with fear or sorrow, but with a profound sense of completion. The great work of their ancestors was coming to its peaceful conclusion, and they were privileged to witness and participate in this most sacred of transformations. In the Temple of Eternal Flames, the priests and priestesses gathered to tend the sacred fires that had burned without interruption since the kingdom's founding. The temple itself was a wonder of sacred architecture, its spiraling towers reaching toward the heavens, while its foundation stones were planted deep in the earth's heart. The flames danced higher tonight, their colors shifting from gold to silver to the deep blue of twilight. Each flame represented an aspect of the divine that watched over Eldermoor: wisdom, compassion, justice, love, and the eternal hope that guided all souls toward their highest destiny. The flames were fed not by mundane fuel, but by the prayers and devotions of the faithful, creating fires that burned with the intensity of pure spirit. The altar at the temple's heart was carved from a single block of star crystal, a material so pure that it sang when touched by sincere emotion. The crystal had been shaped by master carvers who worked in a state of constant meditation, allowing the divine will to guide their hands as they revealed the beauty hidden within the stone. High Priestess Celestine, her silver hair crowned with a circlet of starlight crystals, led the evening prayers with a voice that carried the serenity of one who understood the deeper mysteries of existence. She had served in the temple for over a century, and her understanding of the divine will was so complete that she often knew the needs of her people before they did. Her voice rose like incense into the vaulted ceiling of the temple, where they were caught by the carved angels and carried upward to the realm of eternal song. The angels themselves were not mere decorations, but captured moments of divine presence, frozen in stone, but still radiating the love and compassion that had created them. The prayers tonight were not requests for intervention or pleas for change, but expressions of gratitude for the journey they had shared and the destination toward which they traveled. The words of the prayers had been refined over millennia, each syllable chosen for its power to elevate the soul and connect the speaker to the cosmic wholeness of which they were a part. Vaelthorne remembered the prophecy that had been whispered in the ancient tongue since the founding of Eldermoor. When the last of the Starblood sits upon the throne, and the silver moon rises full in the 13th month, the kingdom shall return to the realm of dreams, carrying with it all who choose to walk the final path. The 13th month had come at last, a month that existed only in the oldest calendars, when time itself bent to accommodate the kingdom's transition. This was not a month measured in ordinary days, but in moments of spiritual significance, when the ordinary rules of causality and sequence gave way to deeper patterns of meaning and purpose. The 13th month was a time of wonders and impossibilities, when the normal rules of reality became fluid and malleable. During these sacred days, the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms grew thin, allowing for transformations that would be impossible at any other time. The very air seemed to shimmer with potential, and every citizen of Eldermoor could feel the approach of something magnificent and eternal. Children born during the 13th month were blessed with special gifts, the ability to see through the veils between worlds, to understand the languages of beasts and growing things, to heal with touch, and to bring peace with their presence. And they grew up knowing that they would witness the kingdom's greatest transformation, and they accepted this destiny with the same grace and wisdom that characterized all of Eldermoor's citizens. The king's thoughts turned to his ancestors, the long line of rulers who had guided Eldermoor through ages of wonder and peace. He could feel their presence around him, not as ghosts or spirits, but as a gentle warmth that spoke of approval and love. They had all prepared for this moment, each adding their own wisdom and experience to the collective understanding that would guide the final transformation. Queen Selenia, the Wise, who had united the scattered clans under the banner of the Silver Moon, and whose diplomatic skills had brought peace to a dozen warring factions. Her gift had been the ability to see the common ground that existed between even the most bitter enemies, to find the words that would turn conflict into cooperation and hatred into understanding. She had established the Council of Voices, a governing body that included representatives from every group and faction in the kingdom, ensuring that no voice would go unheard and no need would go unmet. The council chamber she had designed was a marvel of acoustic engineering, where every speaker could be heard clearly regardless of where they sat, and where the very architecture encouraged honesty and mutual respect. King Aldrich Stormheart, who had tamed the wild dragons and made them guardians of the realm, establishing the Dragon Compact that had protected Eldermoor for 2 millennia. Aldrich had understood that true strength came not from domination but from partnership, and he had approached the great worms as equals rather than as beasts to be conquered. The negotiation had taken place in the Dragon's Crown, a circle of standing stones on the highest peak of the Starward Mountains. For 7 days and 7 nights, Aldrich had sat in council with Stellarion the Ancient, speaking in the dragon tongue, and offering gifts not of gold or treasure, but of respect and understanding. The compact they had forged was written not on parchment, but carved into the living rock of the mountain itself, where it would endure for as long as the earth itself existed. The dragons had become not just protectors, but teachers, sharing their ancient wisdom with the kingdom's scholars and helping to establish Eldermoor as a center of learning and enlightenment. Princess Miriel the Healer, who had brought the gift of the sacred springs to her people, discovering the hidden wells of healing water that could cure any ailment and mend any broken heart. Miriel had been guided by visions to the location of each spring, and she had worked with the earth spirits to ensure that the water would flow pure and clear for all time. The springs she had opened were more than just sources of healing water. They were focal points for the kingdom's spiritual energy, places where the boundary between the physical and divine was thin. Pilgrims would come from across the known world to drink from these waters and experience the peace and restoration they provided. Each spring had its own character and specialization. Some healed physical ailments, others mended emotional wounds, and still others restored spiritual balance and clarity. Miriel had established healing temples around each spring, staffed by priests and physicians who understood that true healing involved more than just the body, but the mind and soul as well. King Vaelthorne the Builder, who had designed and constructed the great cities and roads that connected every corner of the realm. Theron had been blessed with the vision to see how the physical structures of the kingdom could support and enhance its spiritual purpose. His cities were not just places to live and work, but environments that encouraged growth and harmony. The roads he built followed the natural ley lines of magical energy that flowed through the earth, creating pathways that were pleasant to travel and that carried blessings to all who used them. His bridges spanned not just physical distances, but cultural and spiritual gaps, bringing together peoples who might otherwise have remained strangers. His greatest achievement was the construction of the Great Amphitheater of Stars, a performance space that could hold the entire population of the kingdom while ensuring that every person could see and hear perfectly. The amphitheater was carved into a natural hillside and enhanced with acoustic magic that carried not just sound, but emotion and understanding. Queen Lyanna Starseeker, who had established the Academy of Celestial Arts, where the kingdom's greatest mages and scholars studied the mysteries of the cosmos. Lyanna had been gifted with the ability to read the patterns written in starlight, to understand the cosmic forces that shaped reality at its deepest levels. The academy she founded was more than just a school. It was a research institution dedicated to understanding the fundamental nature of existence. Its students learned not just spells and formulas, but the principles that governed the interaction between will and reality, and between thought and manifestation. The Academy's library contained not just books, but crystallized thoughts from the greatest minds in history, artifact memories that could be experienced directly, and prophecy stones that revealed glimpses of possible futures. Graduates of the Academy went on to become not just powerful mages, but wise counselors who helped guide the kingdom's development along paths of harmony and growth. Each ruler had added their own thread to the great tapestry of Eldermoor's history, and now Vaelthorne would weave the final pattern, bringing all the stories to their gentle conclusion. He felt no fear at this responsibility, only a deep sense of honor and love for his people and his land. The weight of their expectations did not burden him, but lifted him up, for he knew that their trust was born of love, and their love was born of understanding. The royal bloodline that flowed through his veins carried within it the accumulated wisdom and experience of all who had come before. This was not merely genetic inheritance, but a spiritual connection that allowed each ruler to draw upon the knowledge and understanding of their predecessors when facing the challenges of their reign. In the royal crypts beneath the palace, the tombs of past monarchs glowed with a soft, pearl-like light. The burial chamber was not a place of death and decay, but a sanctuary where the essence of departed rulers continued to watch over their successors. The bodies of the kings and queens of old had long since transcended their physical forms, but their essence remained to guide and comfort their heir. The crypts themselves were carved from living stone that responded to emotion and intention, creating an environment that shifted and changed to reflect the needs of those who entered. Vaelthorne had spent countless hours in these chambers, seeking counsel from his ancestors and learning from their accumulated wisdom. Tonight their presence was stronger than ever, a chorus of wisdom and encouragement that filled Vaelthorne's heart with courage and peace. He could feel their approval for the choice he was about to make, their understanding that this ending was not defeat, but victory, not loss, but the ultimate transformation. As the night deepened, the king made his way through the palace corridors, visiting each chamber and hall with the reverence of a pilgrim walking sacred ground. Every room held memories, every doorway marked a passage in the great story of Eldermoor. The palace itself had been built as more than just a residence. It was a living symbol of the kingdom's values and aspirations. The corridors themselves were works of art, their walls lined with mosaics that told the history of the kingdom in pictures of breathtaking beauty. The tiles were made from crushed gems and precious metals, but their true value lay in the stories they preserved. Each mosaic had been created through a collaborative process involving historians, artists, and mystics working together to ensure that every detail was accurate and meaningful. The mosaics were not static images, but living artworks that changed subtly over time, revealing new details to those who studied them with patience and understanding. Some showed scenes from the kingdom's past, others depicted possible futures, and still others illustrated abstract concepts like love, wisdom, and the interconnectedness of all things. In the Hall of Ceremonies, where coronations and state occasions had been held for centuries, the walls seemed to echo with the voices of past celebrations. The great chandelier, carved from a single crystal the size of a dragon's egg, cast rainbow patterns on the floor where kings and queens had danced with their beloved subjects. The chandelier itself was a masterpiece of crystal crafting, shaped by artisans who understood that light was not merely illumination, but a form of divine communication. The crystal had been harvested from the Cave of Singing Stones, where geological pressures and magical forces had created formations of incredible beauty and power. The throne room's smaller cousin, this hall had been designed for intimacy rather than grandeur, a place where the royal family could celebrate with those they loved most. The acoustics were perfect for music and conversation, creating an environment where even the shyest guest could feel comfortable participating in the festivities. The royal nursery, though empty now for many years, still held the warmth of childhood laughter and the gentle songs of lullabies. The walls were painted with murals depicting the adventures of Prince Moonbeam and Princess Starlight, characters created by Queen Lyrelay to entertain the palace children. The murals were enchanted to move and change, telling different stories each time they were viewed. Children who spent time in this room would often claim to have conversations with the painted characters who would offer advice and comfort during times of difficulty or uncertainty. The toys and games that remained were crafted with such care and imbued with such love that they seemed almost alive, ready to spring into motion at the first sign of young voices. These were not ordinary playthings, but educational tools disguised as entertainment, designed to teach important lessons about kindness, creativity, and the joy of discovery. In the Library of Echoes, where 10,000 years of knowledge rested on shelves that seemed to stretch into infinity, the ancient tomes glowed with a soft, pearl-like radiance. This was no ordinary library, but a repository of wisdom that existed partially outside of time, where past, present, and future knowledge coexisted in perfect harmony. Books written in the future rested beside chronicles of the distant past, and scholars who visited often discovered exactly the knowledge they needed, even if they hadn't known they were looking for it. The library's collection grew constantly, not through acquisition, but through manifestation, as new knowledge materialized on its shelves in response to the world's changing needs. The books themselves seemed to whisper their contents into the air, creating a symphony of stories and wisdom that would soon return to the cosmic library from which all knowledge springs. This gentle murmuring was not noise, but a form of communication that allowed serious scholars to absorb information at levels far beyond normal reading. The Tome of First Things lay open on a pedestal of living wood, its pages turning themselves as cosmic winds ruffled through its leaves. And this was perhaps the most important book in the collection, containing the fundamental principles that govern the creation and operation of reality itself. The Chronicle of Last Days recorded itself as events unfolded, its golden ink flowing across virgin pages to preserve each moment of the kingdom's transformation. And this book would serve as a guide for other realms facing their own times of transition, offering wisdom gained through Eldermoor's peaceful evolution. Master Archivius, the ancient keeper of the library, moved between the shelves with the graceful steps of one who had spent centuries in service to knowledge. His age was impossible to determine, for he had long ago transcended the normal limitations of mortal existence through his dedication to wisdom and understanding. His beard, white as starlight, brushed the floor as he walked, and his eyes held the depth of one who had read every book and understood every secret contained within these hallowed walls. He spoke rarely, but when he did, his words carried the weight of absolute authority and infinite compassion. He nodded to his king with infinite respect and gentle sadness, understanding that tonight he would catalog the final chapter of Eldermoor's earthly existence. His sorrow was not for loss, but for the beauty of completion, the bittersweet joy that comes when a great work reaches its perfect conclusion. The Hall of Mirrors reflected not just images, but memories. As Vaelthorne passed through, he saw glimpses of every celebration, Every ceremony, every moment of joy and sorrow that these walls had witnessed, the mirrors had been crafted by the mirror makers of the eastern seas, artisans who understood that reflection was not mere physics, but a window into the soul of time itself. Each mirror was unique, designed to show not just what was, but what had been and what might yet come to pass. The reflections they cast were sometimes literal, sometimes symbolic, but always true in ways that transcended mere visual accuracy. The mirrors showed him his own coronation 40 years past, when he had been young and filled with dreams of the future. The ceremony had lasted 3 days and 3 nights, with representatives from every corner of the known world coming to witness the crowning of Eldermoor's final king. The ceremony itself had been a masterpiece of ritual and celebration, designed to honor not just the new king, but the entire history of the kingdom he was inheriting. Each element of the coronation had symbolic meaning, connecting Vaelthorne to the long line of rulers who had preceded him, and to the cosmic forces that had blessed Eldermoor since its founding. The crown had felt impossibly light that day, as if it were made of captured sunbeams rather than starfall metal. The cheers of the crowd had lifted his spirits to heights he had never imagined possible, creating a sense of unity and purpose that would guide his entire reign. They showed him his wedding day, when Princess Lyrelai of the Eastern Kingdoms had become his queen, their love blessing the realm with 2 decades of unprecedented prosperity. The wedding had taken place in the Garden of Eternal Roses, where every flower bloomed in a different color, and each petal carried the scent of a different season. The garden itself had been created for royal weddings, designed to be the most beautiful place in the kingdom. The roses that grew there were descendants of the first roses that had bloomed in the realm of the fairies, brought to the mortal world as a gift from beings who understood the true nature of love. Lyrelai had walked down an aisle of living light, her gown woven from moonbeams and starlight, her beauty so radiant that even the dragons had wept tears of joy. The wedding ceremony had been attended by representatives from every species and realm that had ever been allied with Eldermoor, creating a celebration that transcended the boundaries between mortal and divine. The mirrors also reflected the quieter moments, evenings spent reading together in the royal chambers, mornings walking hand in hand through the palace gardens, afternoons spent in deep discussion about the needs of their people. These intimate moments had been the foundation of their reign, creating the bond of love and understanding that had allowed them to rule as true partners. They showed the way Lyrelai would laugh at his jokes, how her eyes would sparkle when she spoke of her plans to improve the lives of their subjects, how she would fall asleep with her head on his shoulder after long days of royal duties. These were the memories he treasured most, the simple moments of happiness that had made their life together a continuous celebration of love. The mirrors also showed him the day of Lyrelai's passing, when she had chosen to journey to the eternal gardens beyond the veil, knowing that their love would continue in the realm of spirits. Her illness had not been a defeat, but a transformation, a gentle calling from the ancestors who needed her wisdom in the realm beyond time. She had faced her transition with the same grace and courage she had brought to every aspect of her life, teaching their people by example, that death was not an enemy to be feared, but a friend who came to guide souls to their next adventure. Her passing had been marked not by sorrow, but by celebration, as the entire kingdom gathered to honor her life and to celebrate her transformation. Vaelthorne had grieved, but not with despair, for in Eldermoor, death was understood as merely another form of traveling, and love as a force that transcended all boundaries. The kingdom had mourned with him, but their mourning was mixed with celebration, for they knew that their queen had achieved the highest honor, to become a guardian spirit for all those who would follow in her footsteps. In the royal chambers, the king paused at the window that had been Lyrelai's favorite. Here she had sat each morning, brushing her silver hair as the sunrise painted the mountains in shades of gold and rose. The window faced east toward the mountains of dawn, where legend said the first light of creation had touched the world. The view encompassed the valley of singing streams, where the water itself made music as it flowed over rocks of polished crystal. The streams carried melodies from their mountain sources down to the sea, creating an ever-changing symphony that reflected the emotional state of the kingdom. The window itself had been specially crafted to show not just the physical landscape, but glimpses of the emotional resonance of the land. Through this window, Lyrelai had seen the kingdom's joy on feast days, its sorrow during times of trial, its hope during periods of uncertainty. The window had been her connection to the heart of her people. The glass had been made by master glaziers who understood that transparency was a form of truth, and that windows were not just openings in walls, but portals between inner and outer worlds. The panes had been blessed by priests of every faith represented in the kingdom, ensuring that only positive energies could pass through them. Vaelthorne placed his hand on the windowsill, feeling the smooth stone that had been worn by his beloved's touch. The marble had been quarried from the caves of eternal memory, where each stone held within it the impressions of all who had touched it. As his fingers traced the familiar patterns, he could feel the echo of Lyrelai's presence, as if she had just stepped away for a moment and would return at any instant. The windowsill bore the faint impressions of her hands, worn into the stone by decades of daily contact. These impressions seemed to pulse with warmth, as if her love had been captured in the stone itself. Touching them, Vaelthorne felt connected not just to his memories of her, but to her continuing presence in the realm of spirits. The moonlight streaming through the window seemed brighter than usual, and in its glow, the king could almost see Lyrelai's face, smiling at him with the same gentle radiance that had first captured his heart. The moonlight took on the quality of liquid silver, flowing across the floor in patterns that resembled her flowing hair and graceful movements. She seemed to whisper words of encouragement and love, reminding him that their reunion was drawing near, and that the kingdom's ending was not a tragedy, but a transformation. Her voice, though silent to the ears, spoke clearly to his heart, offering the comfort and guidance he needed for the final phase of his earthly reign. The royal chambers themselves told the story of their life together. The bed they had shared was carved from a single piece of heartwood, taken from the tree of eternal vows that grew in the center of the palace gardens. The tree had been planted on their wedding day, and it had grown to become a symbol of their enduring love. The headboard bore intricate carvings that depicted the story of their courtship and marriage, scenes that seemed to move and change in the flickering candlelight. The images were not static, but alive with the memory of the love that had inspired them, shifting and flowing like scenes from a beloved dream. The armoire that held their clothes was filled with garments that carried the memory of every important occasion they had shared. Lyrelai's coronation gown still glowed with the blessing of the high priest, while her everyday dresses held the scent of the garden flowers she had loved so much. Each dress told its own story. The blue silk gown she had worn to their first diplomatic reception, the green velvet dress that had been her favorite for autumn festivals, the simple white robe she had preferred for quiet evenings at home. The fabric remembered not just her form, but her spirit, carrying within its fibers the essence of her grace and kindness. Vaelthorne's ceremonial robes bore the weight of every important decision he had made while wearing them, while his casual clothes held the warmth of quiet evenings spent in domestic happiness. The very threads seemed to pulse with the memories they contained, creating a textile archive of their shared life. Moving through the palace gardens, Vaelthorne walked among the singing flowers, blossoms that had been blessed by the first druids to harmonize with the wind. And these were not ordinary flowers, but living instruments that responded to the emotions and intentions of those who approached them. The flowers themselves were the result of centuries of careful breeding and magical enhancement, each generation more beautiful and more responsive than the last. The druids who had created them understood that beauty and music were not separate things, but different expressions of the same divine impulse. Their melody tonight was particularly beautiful, a song of gratitude and farewell that brought tears of joy to the king's eyes. The harmonies were complex beyond ordinary understanding, weaving together themes of love, loss, transformation, and hope into a musical tapestry that spoke directly to the soul. The Garden of Singing Flowers covered several acres, with pathways that curved and spiraled like musical staves. Each section was planted with flowers that harmonized in different keys and modes, creating a symphony that changed with the seasons and the time of day. Walking through the garden was like moving through a living composition, each step revealing new combinations of melody and harmony. The flowers themselves ranged from tiny bell-shaped blossoms that chimed like silver coins to massive horned flowers that produced deep, resonant tones that could be felt as much as heard. Some bloomed only at certain times of day, adding their voices to the garden's song when the cosmic conditions were right for their particular musical contribution. The Midnight Chorus, flowers that bloomed only in darkness, added their voices to the evening song. These deep purple and midnight blue blossoms produced haunting melodies that spoke of mystery and magic, of dreams and the space between sleeping and waking. Their music had the power to heal troubled hearts and bring peace to restless minds. Tonight, as the kingdom prepared for its transformation, the Midnight Chorus sang with unusual clarity and power, their voices rising in harmonies that seemed to bridge the gap between earth and heaven. The melodies they produced were so beautiful that even the stars seemed to lean closer to listen. The ancient trees bowed their branches in respect as he passed, their leaves rustling with what sounded like gentle applause for the long and faithful service of their king. These were the guardian trees, planted by the first druids to watch over the palace and its inhabitants. They had grown slowly over the centuries, fed by magic and tended with love, until they had become more than plants. They were wise and ancient beings who understood the flow of time and the cycles of existence. Each tree had its own personality and wisdom, accumulated through decades of silent observation and contemplation. The oak trees spoke of strength and endurance. The willows whispered of flexibility and grace. The evergreens sang of permanence and hope. Together, they formed a living council of advisors, offering their guidance to any who knew how to listen. The trees communicated not through words, but through subtle changes in the movement of their branches, the color of their leaves, and the quality of the shade they provided. Those who spent time among them would often find themselves understanding things they had not known before, as the trees shared their accumulated wisdom through means more ancient than speech. The great oak of memory stood at the center of the gardens, its trunk so vast that 20 people holding hands could not encircle it. This was the oldest living thing in the kingdom, a tree that had witnessed every significant event in Eldermoor's history. Its roots extended deep into the earth, connecting it to the ley lines of power that crisscrossed the realm. Its bark bore the carved names and symbols of every significant event in the kingdom's history, a living chronicle that grew more detailed with each passing year. The carvings were not made by human hands, but appeared spontaneously as the tree recorded the events it witnessed. Tonight, new carvings appeared without human hand, the tree itself recording the final chapter of Eldermoor's earthly existence. The symbols that appeared were beautiful beyond description. Flowing scripts that captured not just the facts of what was happening, but the emotional and spiritual significance of the transformation. At the heart of the gardens stood the Fountain of First Light, where legend said the kingdom's founding magic had first touched the earth. The fountain was a marvel of engineering and artistry, with 7 tiers representing the 7 aspects of creation: earth, water, air, fire, spirit, time, and love. Each tier was carved with symbols and patterns that told the story of creation itself, from the first stirring of consciousness in the cosmic void to the emergence of love as the driving force behind all existence. The carvings were so intricate that scholars could spend a lifetime studying them and still discover new meanings and connections. The water danced and sparkled with an inner fire, creating patterns of light that told the story of Eldermoor's birth and growth. The patterns were never the same twice, constantly shifting and evolving as the water responded to the spiritual currents that flowed through the kingdom. The water of the fountain came from the spring of eternal youth, a magical source that bubbled up from the very heart of the world. The spring was connected to the cosmic source from which all life emerged, and its waters carried within them the essence of pure possibility. It was said that anyone who drank from this spring with a pure heart would be blessed with long life and eternal happiness. More importantly, the water had the power to cleanse not just the body, but the soul, washing away the accumulated burdens of earthly existence and preparing the drinker for whatever transformation lay ahead. Tonight, the patterns in the dancing water seemed to spiral upward, as if preparing to carry the kingdom's essence back to the stars from which it had originally descended. The spirals grew more complex and beautiful as the night progressed, creating mandalas of liquid light that spoke of cosmic harmony and perfect order. The fountain's basin was carved from a single piece of star crystal, a material so pure that it sang when touched by sincere emotion. The crystal had been shaped by master craftsmen who worked in a state of constant meditation, allowing the divine will to guide their hands as they revealed the beauty hidden within the stone. The carvings around the rim depicted the entire history of Eldermoor, from its founding to this very night. The images seemed to move and shift in the dancing light of the fountain, telling their stories to any who had the patience and understanding to read them. The king knelt by the fountain and cupped the sacred water in his hands, drinking deeply of its crystalline sweetness. The water carried within it the essence of every spring, every river, every tear of joy and sorrow that had ever been shed in Eldermoor. As it flowed down his throat, Vaelthorne felt himself connecting more deeply with his realm, becoming one with the land and the people he had sworn to serve. The taste of the water was indescribable. It was like drinking starlight and moonbeams, like swallowing the essence of every beautiful moment that had ever occurred in the kingdom. It filled him with a sense of completion, an overwhelming love for everything and everyone he had known. The water seemed to carry messages from his ancestors, words of encouragement and blessing that strengthened his resolve for what was to come. As he drank, he felt the presence of every ruler who had come before him, their combined wisdom flowing into him like a river of liquid light. As he drank, visions flowed through his mind, the faces of every citizen he had ever known, the landscapes of his beloved kingdom in all their seasonal glory, the great ceremonies and quiet moments that had defined his reign. He saw the children who had been born during his rule, now grown into wise and loving adults. He saw the elderly who had passed peacefully, their wisdom preserved in the memories of those who had known them. The visions were not mere memories, but living experiences that allowed him to relive the joy and love that had filled his reign. Each face he saw smiled at him with love and gratitude. Each scene glowed with the warmth of shared purpose and mutual understanding. Standing once more, the king began the final ritual that would guide his kingdom's transformation. This was the ceremony of willing transformation, a rite that had been prepared since the kingdom's founding but never performed. The ritual had been designed by the wisest mystics and scholars of the First Age, who had understood that true transcendence could only be achieved through perfect love and willing sacrifice. The words had been passed down through the royal line since the first dawn, taught to each heir as they prepared to take the throne. Each king and queen had memorized the ritual, understanding that they might be the one called upon to perform it, but hoping that honor would fall to another generation. He spoke in the ancient tongue, words that had been passed down through the royal line since the first dawn. The language itself seemed to reshape reality, each syllable carrying power that made the air shimmer and dance. This was not merely human speech, but the language of creation itself, words that had been spoken when the universe was young and all things were possible. The words were not mere sounds, but crystallized intentions that had been refined and perfected over thousands of years. Each phrase carried the weight of accumulated wisdom and the power of absolute love. Speaking them was not just recitation, but an act of supreme creation, using words to reshape reality itself. Vaeltharos Andumai, Eldermoor Nalatharan, he intoned, his voice carrying across the gardens and beyond. The words meant, by starlight and moonbeam, Eldermoor returns to dreaming. His voice grew stronger with each phrase, resonating not just in the air, but in the very foundations of reality. The words themselves seemed to take on physical form as he spoke them, becoming visible as streams of golden light that flowed outward from his position at the fountain. The light carried the words to every corner of the kingdom, ensuring that every citizen would hear them and understand what was beginning. Seludore morgast, lunethalas eruin. In peace, we journey to the realm of eternal spring. These words had been spoken by the oracle on the day of the kingdom's founding, and now they would guide its transformation. The oracle's original voice seemed to echo in Vaelthorne's words, creating a harmonic resonance that spanned 3,000 years. The phrase carried within it the promise of continuation rather than ending, of evolution rather than death. The eternal spring was not a season, but a state of being where growth and beauty continued forever, where the soul found perfect expression and limitless possibility. Mordun Galad, Elenthar Mitrim. Love eternal, starlight forever shining. The final phrase of the ritual, words that bound the kingdom's essence to the eternal realms, where beauty and truth lived forever. These words were perhaps the most powerful of all, for they invoked the fundamental force that held all creation together. As the ritual words flowed from his lips, the transformation began. It was not sudden or violent, but gentle as the changing of seasons. The palace walls began to shimmer and fade, becoming translucent as morning mist. The stones themselves seemed to remember their origin as stardust and began to return to that primordial state of pure light and energy. The transformation was like watching a flower bloom in reverse, but instead of decay, each stage revealed greater beauty and perfection. The physical structures that had housed the kingdom's life were revealed to be temporary expressions of something far more wonderful and eternal. The transformation spread outward from the palace in gentle waves, touching every building, every tree, every living thing with the soft radiance of change. The waves moved at the speed of thought rather than sound, carrying with them the love and intention that powered the transformation. The gardens around him grew more vibrant and beautiful, even as they became ethereal, their colors deepening while their substance lightened. The flowers continued to sing, their melodies becoming more complex and beautiful as they transcended their physical forms. Each plant and flower became a note in a cosmic symphony, their individual beauty contributing to a harmony so perfect that it brought tears to the eyes of celestial beings. Distant realms, The gardens became not just beautiful spaces, but expressions of pure aesthetic perfection. Throughout the kingdom, the people felt the change beginning. They came from their homes and gathered in the streets and squares, not in panic or fear, but in celebration. The transformation had been prophesied for so long that every citizen understood what was happening and welcomed it with joy and wonder. The people of Eldermoor had been prepared for this moment through generations of teaching and spiritual development. They understood that what was happening was not death, but the ultimate form of life, not ending, but the perfect beginning they had all been moving toward. Families held hands, their bonds of love becoming visible as golden threads of light that connected heart to heart. The love that had always existed between them became manifest as streams of radiance that wove a web of connection throughout the gathering crowds. Lovers embraced their passion, transforming into radiant auras that blessed everyone around them. The love between couples became a source of light and warmth that spread outward in ever-expanding circles, touching everyone nearby with its beauty and power. Children laughed with delight as the world around them began its metamorphosis, their innocence and joy catalyzing the transformation with pure, unfiltered happiness. The children had always been the most ready for transformation, their souls unencumbered by doubt or fear, their hearts open to wonder and possibility. The elderly wept tears of gratitude, understanding that they were witnessing the most beautiful ending ever written, the culmination of everything they had worked and hoped for throughout their lives. Their tears were not of sorrow, but of overwhelming joy at seeing the completion of the great work they had helped to build. They had been prepared for this night by centuries of gentle wisdom passed down through generations, stories and songs that had taught them to see transformation not as loss, but as the ultimate form of growth. Their acceptance and joy provided the emotional foundation that made the transformation possible. The transition was like falling asleep after a long and satisfying day, or like the moment when twilight fades into the velvet embrace of night. The physical forms of buildings, trees, and people began to take on the quality of living light, their essence preserved while their earthly bonds gently dissolved. And this was not death as other realms understood it, but translation from one form of existence to another, infinitely more beautiful and perfect. Each soul retained its individuality while becoming part of something greater, like notes in a symphony that remained distinct while contributing to a harmony beyond what any single voice could achieve. In the marketplaces, the merchants' stalls transformed into fountains of abundance that would feed all who hungered, not just for bread, but for beauty and meaning. The goods they had sold, crafted with love and skill, became lasting gifts to the universe, templates of perfection that would inspire creation throughout the cosmos. Every item that had been made with care and love found its perfect expression in the transformation, becoming not just a physical object, but an idea given eternal form. The simple pottery became vessels for divine nectar. The woven cloth became garments for celestial beings. The carved wood became trees in paradises yet to be discovered. The workshops of the artisans filled with a golden radiance as their tools and materials transcended their physical limitations. The blacksmith's forges became stars in miniature, their flames reaching temperatures that could forge the essence of dreams. The anvils on which they had worked became altars where cosmic forces shaped the fundamental elements of creation. The hammers they had wielded became instruments of cosmic percussion, beating out the rhythm that underlied all existence. The weaver's looms began creating tapestries from threads of pure light, patterns that told stories too beautiful for mortal comprehension. These new creations would become the decorations for palaces and realms of pure spirit, where beauty was not ornament, but substance. In the palace, Vaelthorne continued his ritual, his voice growing stronger and more resonant with each verse. The crown upon his head began to glow with the light of captured stars, each gem becoming a miniature sun that cast no shadows but illuminated everything with perfect clarity. The transformation of the crown was perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the entire process, as each jewel expanded into a star that would mark significant points in the cosmic map. These stars would serve as beacons for travelers between the realms, guiding souls on their journeys through the infinite reaches of existence. His robes flowed around him like liquid silver, the fabric transcending its material nature to become an expression of royal dignity and eternal love. The embroidery came alive, the threads of gold and silver becoming streams of light that told the story of his reign in living illumination. He felt himself becoming more than human, transforming into a bridge between the world of matter and the realm of spirit. His consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of his individual self, encompassing the hopes and dreams of every soul in his kingdom. This expansion was not a loss of self, but a discovery of his true nature, which had always been larger than his physical form could contain. He became simultaneously more himself than he had ever been, and more than himself than he had ever imagined possible. He was no longer just their king, but their representative in the cosmic councils, where the fate of worlds was decided. His role would continue in the realm of spirit, where he would advocate for all souls seeking growth and understanding. The transformation reached every of Eldermoor simultaneously, as if the kingdom were a single living organism awakening from a long and peaceful sleep. The borders of the realm, marked for centuries by ancient stone cairns, began to glow with the same gentle radiance that filled the palace. The transformation did not stop at these boundaries, but extended outward, creating a buffer zone of tranquility that would protect neighboring lands from any disruption. This was not conquest, but gift, a blessing that would leave the surrounding areas more beautiful and peaceful than they had been before. The great bell tower of Lumendor chimed the hour of transformation, its voice now joined by bells throughout the kingdom. Each tolling note added harmony to the cosmic symphony that was guiding Eldermoor's journey. The sound was not mournful but triumphant, celebrating the completion of a great work and the beginning of an even greater adventure. The bells themselves began to change, their bronze and silver forms becoming crystalline structures that sang with the voices of angels. The metal remembered every prayer it had called people to, every celebration it had announced, every moment of joy and sorrow it had marked, and all these memories became part of its eternal song. The melodies they produced were impossibly complex and beautiful, harmonies that spoke to the deepest parts of the soul and awakened memories of the realm from which all spirits originally came. Hearing this music, every soul in the kingdom remembered their true home and felt the joy of approaching reunion. As the ritual reached its crescendo, Vaelthorne felt the presence of every soul in his kingdom, their spirits intertwining with his own in a tapestry of love and shared purpose. He was no longer just their king, but their companion on the journey into eternity. Together they would carry the essence of Eldermoor into the realm of dreams, where all beautiful things find their eternal home. Their unity was complete but not overwhelming, a harmony that preserved individual identity while creating something greater than the sum of its parts. The connection between king and subjects became complete, a unity that transcended individual identity while preserving the unique beauty of each soul. Through this connection, Vaelthorne experienced the transformation from every perspective. Through the eyes of children seeing magic made manifest, through the hearts of lovers whose bond became an eternal flame, through the wisdom of elders who understood the cosmic significance of what was occurring. This shared experience was perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the transformation, as every soul was able to participate in the complete experience rather than being limited to their individual perspective. Love became not just an emotion, but a form of communication that allowed perfect understanding and empathy. The palace around him was now pure light, its walls and chambers existing as patterns of radiance that danced and shifted with the rhythm of cosmic breath. The architecture became frozen music, every line and curve expressing harmonies that had never been heard but always felt. The throne of whispers had become a constellation of stars, each gem and curve transformed into points of living starlight that would guide other kingdoms in their own times of transition. The throne itself became not a seat of earthly power, but a focal point for cosmic harmony. The throne room itself had become a cosmic amphitheater where the music of the spheres could be heard in all its glory. The walls, now made of crystallized starlight, reflected not just images, but the deepest truths of existence. Every surface became a mirror that showed not appearances, but the soul's true nature. The floor had become a map of the heavens, with pathways of light showing the routes by which souls traveled between the realms of matter and spirit. Walking on this floor would be like navigating the cosmic currents that connected all things, understanding the fundamental unity that underlies apparent separation. Vaelthorne himself began to feel the change taking hold in the most profound way possible. His body grew light as morning mist, his consciousness expanding to encompass not just his own thoughts and memories, but those of all his people. He was becoming the living embodiment of Eldermoor's spirit, the keeper of its essence, who would ensure that its beauty and wisdom lived on in the eternal realms. The transformation of his physical form was accompanied by an expansion of his understanding. He could now perceive the vast cosmic web that connected all things, the invisible threads of love and purpose that bound every soul to every other. He saw how Eldermoor fit into the greater pattern of creation, how its transformation would send ripples of beauty and inspiration throughout the universe. The kingdom's willing transformation would serve as an example to countless other realms, showing that evolution and transcendence were possible through love rather than conquest. His consciousness touched the minds of beings in distant realms, other kingdoms, and worlds that would benefit from Eldermoor's gift of willing transformation. He saw how the example of his people would inspire countless others to choose love over fear, transcendence over mere survival, the beauty of shared destiny over the loneliness of individual struggle. This cosmic awareness was not overwhelming, but liberating, showing him that individual consciousness was not separate from universal consciousness, but a unique expression of it. He remained himself while becoming part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful. The kingdom's libraries released their knowledge into streams of golden light that spiraled upward toward the stars, carrying the wisdom of ages to the cosmic repositories where all learning eventually returns. Every book, every scroll, every scrap of written wisdom became a beam, radiant knowledge that would enrich the universal library of truth. The knowledge did not simply disappear, but underwent its own transformation, becoming pure understanding that could be accessed by any soul ready to receive it. The accumulated wisdom of Eldermoor's scholars, philosophers, and sages joined the eternal symphony of cosmic knowledge. This wisdom would become available to any seeker throughout the universe, not as information to be memorized, but as understanding to be lived. The kingdom's greatest gift to the cosmos was not its wealth or power, but the wisdom gained through 3,000 years of peaceful existence. The artworks and sculptures became pure expressions of beauty, their forms translating into colors and harmonies that would inspire creation throughout the universe. The paintings stepped out of their frames to become living landscapes of impossible beauty, while the statues awakened to dance in celebration of the transformation. Even the humblest creations, a child's drawing, a simple song, a moment of unexpected kindness, were preserved and elevated, becoming part of the eternal gallery of beauty that adorned the halls of cosmic memory. Nothing created with love was ever truly lost, but found its place in the infinite museum of wonderful things. This transformation of art into living beauty would inspire countless artists throughout the universe, showing them that creativity was not just self-expression, but participation in the ongoing creation of reality itself. Even as his physical form dissolved into radiance, Vaelthorne felt more real, more himself than he had ever been. The limitations of flesh and stone fell away, revealing the true nature that had always existed within him. He was love made manifest, wisdom given form, the gentle strength that had guided his people through their earthly journey and now led them into their celestial home. This revelation of his true nature was shared by every soul in the kingdom, as each discovered that they were not their bodies, not their roles, not their fears or limitations, but expressions of pure love and wisdom that had temporarily forgotten their divine nature. The crown that had once been worn upon his head became a constellation in its own right, its gems expanding into stars that would mark the location of Eldermoor's eternal realm for any soul seeking guidance or inspiration. The crown's light could be seen from any point in the universe by those who knew how to look with the eyes of love and understanding. This new constellation would serve as a beacon for souls seeking transcendence, showing them that transformation was possible, and that love was the key to unlocking their highest potential. The stars of the crown would sing with the voices of all who had achieved transformation through love. And the last thing to fade from the material realm was the king's voice, still singing the ancient words of transformation. But even as his earthly song ended, it continued in the realm of spirit, joined by the voices of all his people, in an eternal chorus of joy and gratitude. The song itself became a living thing, a melody that would echo throughout the cosmos, carrying within it the essence of everything beautiful that Eldermoor had ever been. The harmony was so perfect that it brought tears of joy to the eyes of celestial beings in distant realms, and inspired new forms of music that had never been imagined before. This cosmic song would become part of the fundamental harmonic structure of the universe, a melody that would inspire beauty and love wherever it was heard. The song would never end, but would continue to grow and evolve as more souls added their voices to its eternal chorus. In the morning, travelers passing through the valley where Eldermoor had stood found only a meadow filled with flowers that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The flowers were unlike any that grew elsewhere in the world, their petals shifting through every color of the rainbow, while their centers held the deep, starry darkness of cosmic space. The meadow itself had become a sacred place, where the veil between the physical and spiritual realms remained thin. Pilgrims would come from across the known world to experience the peace and beauty that lingered in this place. The wind through the grass carried the faint sound of distant music, melodies so beautiful that those who heard them wept without understanding why. Some travelers reported that the music filled them with an overwhelming sense of peace and purpose, as if they had remembered something infinitely precious that they had forgotten long ago. The music was not mere sound, but a form of communication from the realm where Eldermoor now existed, carrying messages of love and encouragement to any who needed them. Those who listened with open hearts could hear their own names woven into the melodies, along with words of comfort and guidance. Those who listened carefully could hear what sounded like laughter and songs of celebration carried on the breeze, the voices of a people who had found their way home to the realm of eternal joy. The sounds were not mere echoes, but living expressions of happiness that touched the hearts of all who heard them. The laughter was infectious in the best possible way, inspiring joy in those who heard it and reminding them that happiness was their natural state. The songs carried within them the wisdom gained through Eldermoor's peaceful existence, offering guidance to any who sought to create their own paradise. Some said that on certain nights, when the moon was full and the stars shone particularly bright, one could still see the outline of a great palace in the mist and the figure of a king standing at its highest window, watching over the dreams of those who slept. These visions were not illusions, but glimpses of the eternal realm where Eldermoor continued to exist in perfect form. Palace and its king existed now in a dimension where beauty was substance and love was the fundamental force that held all things together. Others claimed that the flowers in the meadow whispered stories in the old tongue, tales of a kingdom where love conquered time and where endings were simply new beginnings in disguise. The stories were different each time they were heard, but all shared the same themes of love, sacrifice, and the beauty of willing transformation. The flowers had indeed become storytellers, their essence intertwined with the memories of all who had lived in Eldermoor. They spoke not just to the ears, but to the heart, sharing the wisdom they had gained through their participation in the kingdom's transformation. The meadow itself became a place of pilgrimage, where those seeking wisdom or healing could come to experience the lingering presence of Eldermoor's magic. The grass grew in patterns that spelled out words of comfort and encouragement in a dozen different languages, while the soil had the power to heal both physical ailments and wounds of the heart. Visitors to the meadow often reported experiencing profound spiritual insights and healing of old traumas. The very earth seemed to radiate love and acceptance, helping souls remember their own divine nature and potential for transformation. The poets and storytellers who came after would sing of King Vaelthorne the Last and his realm of Eldermoor, but they would not sing of tragedy or loss. Instead, they would tell of the most beautiful ending ever written, a conclusion so perfect that it transformed every story that came before it into something more wonderful than it had ever been alone. Their songs spread throughout the world, carrying the message that transformation was not something to be feared, but celebrated. Kings and queens in distant lands began to rule with greater wisdom and compassion, inspired by the example of a monarch who had chosen love over power, transcendence over mere survival. The story of Eldermoor became a legend that inspired countless acts of kindness and wisdom. Its message spread like ripples in a cosmic pond, touching hearts and minds across the known world and inspiring a golden age of cooperation and understanding. For in choosing to fade with grace, rather than fight against the turning of ages, Vaelthorne had given his kingdom the gift of eternal life in the realm of memory and dream. Eldermoor lived on, not as a place that could be found on any map, but as an ideal of perfect rulership and willing sacrifice, an example of how love could transform even endings into beginnings. The transformation had created something unprecedented in the cosmos, a kingdom that existed simultaneously in the realm of spirit and in the hearts of all who heard its story. Eldermoor became a destination for souls seeking peace and understanding, a place where the weary could find rest and the lost could find their way home. In this dual existence made Eldermoor more powerful and influential in its transcended state than it had ever been as a physical kingdom. Its example inspired countless other realms to choose paths of peace and cooperation, creating a cascade of positive change throughout the universe. And in the cosmic library where all stories are kept, the tale of Eldermoor was written in letters of starlight on pages made from crystallized moonbeams, ensuring that its beauty would inspire countless generations yet to come. The book itself was a living thing, its pages turning themselves to show exactly the chapter that each reader needed to see. The book became one of the most treasured volumes in the cosmic library, consulted by beings from across the universe who sought to understand the true nature of love and sacrifice. Its pages never wore out, but grew more beautiful with each reading. The last king had become the first citizen of a realm beyond time where all who had ever loved faithfully and had ruled with wisdom would eventually find their home. In that place of eternal spring, where time flowed like honey and every moment contained the seed of infinite possibility, Vaelthorne welcomed all who sought to understand the true meaning of kingship. Not dominion over others, but service to the highest good. His role as eternal king was not one of command, but of guidance and inspiration, helping other souls discover their own capacity for love and transformation. He became a teacher in the truest sense, one who helped others remember their own divine nature. The wind still carries their songs for those who know how to listen. The melodies drift across the world, touching the hearts of anyone ready to receive them. The songs speak of love that transcends death, of beauty that outlasts stone and steel, of the truth that nothing created with pure intention is ever truly lost. These songs have become part of the world's spiritual heritage, inspiring countless souls to choose love over fear, cooperation over competition, and transformation over stagnation. The music continues to evolve and grow as more voices join its eternal chorus. The stars still remember their light for those who know how to see. In the constellation that was once Vaelthorne's crown, astronomers can see patterns of light that seem to spell out words of encouragement and hope. The light reaches across vast distances to touch worlds where other kingdoms face their own moments of choice between fear and love. The constellation has become a source of guidance for navigators and mystics alike, offering direction to those who are lost and inspiration to those who seek to transcend their limitations. Its light grows brighter as more souls choose the path of love and transformation. And in the dreams of children who believe in magic and the wisdom of old souls who have learned that endings are just another word for transformation, the kingdom of Eldermoor continues its gentle reign, ruling not through power or force, but through the simple, overwhelming truth that love eternal never truly ends. In that place beyond the veil, King Vaelthorne sits not on a throne of moonstone, but on a seat woven from hope and starlight, governing not subjects, but friends, ruling not by decree, but by example, teaching all who would learn that the greatest kingdoms are not built from stone and steel, but from kindness, wisdom, and the courage to let go when the time for transformation has come. And there in that realm of eternal spring, where time flows like honey and every moment contains the seed of infinite possibility, the story of Eldermoor continues, not as memory, but as living truth, a testament to the power of love to transform even the most final of farewells into the most joyful of reunions. The last breath of the earthly kingdom became the first breath of its eternal incarnation, and those who had been its people became its guardians, ensuring that the values and beauty they had cherished would forever be available to any soul seeking a glimpse of what paradise might truly mean. Thus ended the tale of Eldermoor, the kingdom that chose to fade like twilight into the embrace of stars, leaving behind not ruins or regret, but inspiration and the gentle promise that all beautiful things, when their earthly time is complete, find their way home to the realm where beauty itself was born. In the silence that followed their departure, the universe itself seemed to smile, enriched by their gift of perfect love and willing sacrifice, carrying their essence forward into stories yet to be told and dreams yet to be dreamed.